Royal Highness, thank you so much, Prince Reza Pahlavi, for being with us today for this International Women's Rights Day. My first question will be, why is this day so important to you?
I don't think there is a moment in history where the significance of Women's International Day would be so apropos when it comes to the people of Iran, and particularly Iranian women. Ever since the revolution, the first victims of it were the Iranian women who lost the rights that they enjoyed before the revolution in equality with their counterpart. And very soon, since the beginning, they've been protesting this regime and have suffered the consequences of life under this regime that treats women as second-class citizens. It is therefore, I think, in terms of international, the world in which we live, the plight of Iranian women could not be more significant at this time. So this is a very important mark of a day that celebrates and defends women's rights. And this is something that is perhaps the most important among other rights that Iranian citizens ought to have. And to me, it's very, very important. So I cannot stress enough the importance and significance of this day.
Nobel Peace Prize Dr. Mukwege is talking about positive masculinity, saying that man has a duty being together with women in order for women's rights to become human rights. Could you tell us why, as a man, you think it is important to be on the side of women to stand for women's rights?
Well, actually, it is imperative that men are extremely proactive in defending women's rights, because if there was an injustice or lack of gender equality, it is for the other gender to make sure the equality exists. And as such, men should not be just passive about this. And fortunately, the good news is that when I look at today's young generation of Iranians, the Gen Z of Iran, they are more than ever in solidarity and support of their female counterpart. And this is so important, even when we witness the women life liberty movement being started as a result of Mahsa Amini's murder. We have seen that more often than not, young Iranian men were side by side with their fellow Iranian sisters and mothers and daughters, standing for their right. It has become an imperative element for our society when it comes to human rights, when it comes to putting an end to any form of discrimination, including, of course, sexual discrimination. So beyond the duty, they are actually taking it in their own hands. I don't think they need to be told this. They are already doing it. We need to do even more. We have to make sure that our future will guarantee the fact that women in Iran can enjoy all the liberties and opportunities and equalities that are currently completely denied. And that takes a whole society to stand side by side. If men, I would even say, have a more important responsibility today vis-a-vis this issue than ever before, because this injustice can only be resolved when women and men in Iran work side by side about this. And now, for one, I'm doing my part.
So concretely, what can we do to help the statue of Iranian woman today? And could you give us an anecdote, especially dealing with women's rights, in your career?
Well, Iran was one of the first countries in the Middle East to adopt a family law, which was a very important benchmark for bringing and advancing the cause of the right of women and young girls in Iran. The very first thing that Khomeini did was to abolish that law. A lot of progress was done at the time. Iran was, women received suffrage and a right to vote 4 years before the women in Switzerland did. We had the most advanced family laws in Iran. Women were fully participating in the affairs of the country. We had ministers, judges, and all sorts of people working even in the military branch of our country before the revolution. And I think that significant element helped to bring our country full force into a path of modernity and development. And women were involved in various aspects of society, in universities, as teachers, as architects and engineers, and you have it. We need to make sure that the future guarantees this chance for equal opportunity. And it's of course, a lot of it has to do with the law of the land. A lot of this has to do with the constitutional right and the laws of the country. But you also have to constantly remind people, we have to create a new political culture. And that's very important when you're fighting with elements who have been extremely chauvinistic on one side, on one part, and a lot of it, unfortunately, takes root in religion. And I think one of the reasons why it is so important for us to have a secular democratic future in Iran, where there's a clear separation of religion from state, it is because a lot of these restrictions is as a result of the religious factor, and we need to separate that in order not to fall into issues such as Sharia law, which is extremely limiting when it comes to, again, the right of women in Iran. Case in point, what the regime is doing right now. It takes the testimony of 2 women in court of law to equal the testimony of 1 man. How could that possibly be the basis of Iranian women's right? All of this can change by means of proper legislation. All of this can change by a guarantee within the constitution. But most importantly, it's also an education that is constant, and we need to make sure that that culture constantly prevails, and generation after generation, we make sure that there's no reversal of that. And this time that women will be able to hang on to their rights as opposed to lose it the way they did 45 years ago.
Do you think peace education can be key in order to have acceptance on both sides, men and women?
Absolutely. And I think in a world of social media, when there's no longer the excuse of not knowing the facts, we have to utilize various platforms to educate, to inform, and to connect people to one another. Not just Iranians with Iranians, naturally, but Iranians with the rest of the world. If you look at all the activities that we can find in various social media platforms, especially when it comes to intercultural connection and connectivity with people of the world, as much as the Iranian movement inspired many women in the world to stand in support of what happened in Iran. When we saw female legislators in European legislatures or other places in support of the Iranian women cutting their hair, for example, and also the kind of messaging that goes back into Iran, empowering and giving hope and courage for people to stand up for their rights, particularly women, we have to utilize all these means. And I think this is a time that the Iranian people need not feel that they are alone in this fight. I've always stressed how important it is to have the moral support and backing of the international community, particularly democratic countries where women's rights are fully respected. They need to know that they are not alone in this, and they have the full support of the citizenry of these countries and their governments.
Would you tell us a woman who would have been a role model for your career?
Well, you know, as I was growing up, I saw how much effort was done with respect to that. My mother, for example, and everything she did to advance the cause of women and her activities in various aspects of culture and what have you. My aunt, other members of my family, and people that I knew growing up, people who were at the forefront of women actively doing positive work. Our first Minister of Education, Farrokh Parsa, who unfortunately was one of the first people executed by the regime after the revolution, or someone like Mahnaz Afkhami, who was really one of the pioneers in the field of bringing women's rights into action in Iran, and so many other people I could name who are truly inspirational and role models for what happened. I myself take pride of the fact that as seeing my wife and her work in terms of being a lawyer and the time that she worked for that, and her support of Iranian causes, children causes, and what have you. My daughters who are now also working and enjoy the freedom that America offers a young woman to be able to pretty much do everything that they can. All of these elements, I think, is quite inspirational, knowing that it is in total freedom that we can have the maximum output and contribution of women in society in various roles and and shapes. And this is the future that Iran needs to think that we need to engage full force, every aspect of citizenry, and especially the vital role that I think women can play in Iran's society in all sorts of different areas. But first and foremost, we have to make sure that they are liberated, that a whole nation is liberated, and that we have the protection of the law and the rule of law, which is ultimately what guarantees citizens their rights.
Yeah, to finish this too short interview, could you tell us, please, Your Royal Highness, any advice or any inspirational quote for this International Women's Rights Day?
I think when you look at the sacrifices that has been made by our women all these years, nothing can be more inspiring into seeing why is it that we have to be much more than just observer of that. We have to do everything we can to redress and reverse this injustice. And frankly, I think that more than me inspiring them, they inspire me. And all I can do is to, in fact, highlight their sacrifices, highlight their efforts, highlight their aspirations, and for them to know that they are not alone in this, that we all stand together, men and women together, to fight for that liberation. And I think it goes without saying that being successful in this endeavor will mean that finally we can be rid of a system that has denied us for more than 4 decades the natural rights of every citizen in Iran, men or women, to be participant fully in the affairs of their country and to have a true chance of prosperity and progress. And I believe that this is the key message, that unity is fundamental in the success of any society. When we stand all together for fundamental rights and causes, that's the only way to prevail and ultimately succeed.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Your Royal Highness. Thank you, Reza Pahlavi, for being with us and putting women's rights into human rights again.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.